a world wrapped in violet mist and silence, Lyra Voss stood alone at the edge of a black stone balcony. The wind moved like breath through the tall crystal trees that grew in spirals around her tower. Far below, rivers of liquid silver cut through valleys older than most stars. This place had no name on galactic charts. It was forgotten, hidden, and that was exactly why she chose it. Lyra was not human. Her skin held the pale shimmer of moonlight on snow, and her eyes were the color of deep forest pools. Green, but with something ancient behind them. Pointed ears rose from her silver-white hair, which fell like strands of starlight down her back. Once she had worn robes of the Sylvan Enclave, a proud order of elf-like beings who spoke with the voice of old galaxies and moved like shadows between worlds. Now she wore simple leathers, patched and worn from years of exile. She had been cast out for one reason. She defended Earth. The Galactic Council had declared humanity unstable, too emotional, too chaotic, too loud. They argued that humans polluted space with noise, war, and messy emotions. Lyra had stood in the grand chamber of the council and said, "You do not know them. You have never walked their cities. You have never seen their artists, their healers, their quiet heroes. For that, they stripped her of rank, title, and home. But they did not take her dragon." Kale lay curled on the warm stone floor inside the tower, his scales the color of cooled lava. He was small for a dragon, no bigger than a large dog, but his presence filled the room like thunder waiting to break. His eyes, slitted and golden, followed Lyra as she stepped back inside. He made no sound, but she felt his question in the air. "They are coming," she said softly. Kale rose slowly, stretching his wings just enough to ripple the air. His claws clicked against the obsidian floor. He did not need words. He knew the council's ships. He remembered their cold voices, their sterile judgments. He had been with Lyra since she was a child, hatched from an egg found in the ruins of a dead star. Dragons like him were rare. Most were myths or weapons locked in vaults. But Kale was free. And loyal. Lyra walked to a table where a strange device hummed, a human-made scanner jury-rigged with elven crystal. Its screen flickered with distant signals. 3 warships, council design, closing fast. They had found her. She did not panic. Panic was a luxury for those who still believed they could hide. Instead, she reached for the long rifle leaning against the wall. It was not elven. It was human. Black, sleek, and deadly quiet. Its barrel was wrapped in a coil of bioreactive fiber that pulsed faintly when touched by her fingers. This was not just a weapon. It was a promise. A promise made to a woman named May Holloway. May had arrived 6 months ago, dropped from a battered dropship with nothing but a duffel bag and that rifle. She spoke only when needed. She moved like smoke. Lyra had expected a soldier, loud, boastful, eager. Instead, she found someone who understood silence better than most elves. May did not ask why Lyra was exiled. She did not demand answers. She simply said, "Teach me your ways. I will teach you mine," and so they trained. In the misty canyons under twin moons, May learned to read the wind like an elven scout. Lyra learned to hold still like a human sniper, so still that time itself seemed to pause. They did not become friends in the way humans often described friendship. They became something deeper, partners in purpose. Now, with council ships descending, Lyra knew May would be ready. She was never far. Outside, the sky darkened as the warships broke through the upper atmosphere. Their hulls gleamed like polished bone, smooth and lifeless. No markings, no flags, just the cold authority of the council. They hovered in perfect formation, silent except for the low hum of gravity drives. Lyra stepped back onto the balcony. Kale followed, his tail low, his breath slow and controlled. He did not growl. Dragons did not waste energy on sound when action was coming. A voice echoed from above, projected by unseen speakers. "Lyra Voss, you are summoned by order of the Galactic Council. Surrender yourself and your human associate. Resistance is illogical." Lyra did not answer. She simply raised her hand. From a ridge half a kilometer away, a single shot cracked the air, not with explosion but with a sharp, clean whisper. The lead warship shuddered. A sensor array on its bow exploded into sparks, not destroyed. Disabled. Precise. The council ships shifted, confused. They had expected ambush, not precision. They scanned the terrain, but the mist and crystal trees scattered their sensors. They saw nothing. But Lyra smiled. May was already moving. She crouched in a hollow of black rock, her body wrapped in a thermal cloak that matched the stone. Her rifle rested on a folded blanket. barrel cool despite the shot. Her eyes, gray like storm clouds, never blinked as she watched the ships through her scope. She had no fear. Fear blurred the sight. She had only focus. She had come to this world not as a soldier, but as a student. Earth had been watching the stars for decades, listening to whispers of alien politics. When Lyra's exile was broadcast across hidden networks, May volunteered. Not for glory, not for war, but because someone had to show the galaxy that humans were more than noise. And sometimes the loudest statement was made in silence. Back at the tower, Lyra turned to KL. "Stay close," she said. "They will send enforcers next. Ground troops. They think we are weak because we are few." KL exhaled a thin stream of smoke. It curled like a question mark in the air, then vanished. Within minutes, sleek drop pods slammed into the valley floor. Armored figures emerged, tall insectoid enforcers with mirrored visors and pulse rifles. They moved in perfect sync, scanning, advancing. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their programming was absolute. Lyra waited until they were within 200 meters. Then she stepped forward, hands open, empty. "I am here," she said, "but you will not take me." The lead enforcer raised its weapon. "Surrender." Instead of answering, Lyra dropped to one knee. Kale leapt past her, wings flaring wide. His mouth opened, not in a roar but in a low, resonant hum. The ground trembled. The air thickened. Then from his throat a beam of white-hot plasma lanced out, not wide and wild but narrow and surgical. It struck the enforcer's chest plate and burned straight through, leaving a clean hole. The enforcer collapsed without a sound. Chaos followed. The other enforcers fired, but their shots scattered against the tower's energy shield. Another human-elven hybrid, powered by Kale's bioenergy and May's field engineering. Lyra moved like water, dodging, weaving, drawing them deeper into the canyon where May had set traps. Wires, pressure plates, sonic emitters tuned to disrupt their neural links. One by one, the enforcers fell, not to brute force, but to cleverness. To patience. From her perch, May watched. She did not fire again. Not yet. Her role was not to kill, but to control. To make them doubt. To make them fear the quiet. By the time the last enforcer lay still, the council ships had retreated to high orbit. They would not risk more losses on the ground. Not yet. Lyra stood over the fallen, breathing hard. Kale returned to her side, his scales dimming from red to deep orange. He nudged her hand with his snout, a rare gesture of comfort. She looked toward the ridge where May waited. Even from this distance, she felt the woman's presence. Steady, calm, unmoved. "They will come back," Lyra said. Kale huffed. "Yes," she agreed. "But next time we will be ready." And for the first time since her exile, Lyra did not feel alone. She had a dragon who remembered the birth of stars, and a human who could kill with a whisper. Together, they would show the galaxy what Earth truly was. Not awkward, not chaotic, but precise. Patient, and dangerous when ignored. The violet mist curled around the tower once more, hiding them again, but not for long. The war had only just begun. May Holloway sat cross-legged on the floor of the freighter's cargo bay, her back against a crate marked with faded Earth symbols. The ship groaned softly as it drifted through the void between stars, its hull patched with scavenged plating and humming with mismatched systems. Outside, the black was endless, broken only by the slow blink of distant suns. Inside, it was quiet, just the low thrum of engines and the soft click of May's fingers against her rifle stock. She did not speak much. She never had. Growing up in the dry hills of Nevada, words were often wasted on wind. Her grandfather taught her to watch, to listen, to wait. By the time she was 10, she could track a coyote by the way dust settled behind it. By 16, she could hit a tin can at 800 meters with a bolt-action rifle older than she was. By 25, she was the best long-range marksman the United Earth Defense had ever seen. Not because she was flashy, not because she talked big, but because she understood stillness. Stillness was power. Now, aboard this cobbled-together ship named the Iron Wren, stillness was survival. Lyra entered the bay without sound. Her boots made no echo on the metal grating. She carried a data slate glowing with alien script, her silver hair tied back in a simple knot. Kale followed, his claws clicking softly, his wings folded tight against his scaled body. He sniffed the air, then padded over to May and lay down beside her, his head resting on his front paws. May reached out and scratched behind his ear ridge. He rumbled, a sound like distant thunder. We are close, Lyra said. May nodded. She did not need to ask close to what. They both knew. The Council's main fleet was gathering near Proxima Centauri, a show of force, a warning, and at its heart sat Admiral Vorlak, the one who had pushed hardest for Earth's quarantine. He called humans a biological error, a mistake that should be contained before it spread. May had read his speeches. She had studied his patterns. His ship always stayed at the center of formation. He never left the command deck during drills. He trusted his shields more than his instincts. That was his weakness. Lyra sat beside her, the data slate resting on her knees. I have decrypted part of their comms. They think we are still hiding on the fringe world. They do not know we stole this ship. May glanced at the ceiling. The Iron Wren had been a supply hauler once, abandoned after a skirmish with pirate clans. They found it drifting near Saturn's rings, half gutted but with a working core. May rewired the navigation. Lyra rebuilt the stealth field using Sylvan resonance tech. Kale provided the power source, his own bioenergy, channeled through a converter May built from scrap. It was not a warship, but it did not need to be. They had one shot. Lyra tapped the slate. Vorlak's flagship, the Oath of Order, has 3 shield layers, kinetic, thermal, and phase, standard Council design. But there is a gap less than half a second between thermal reset and phase re-engage. During fleet maneuvers, May's eyes narrowed. Half a second was nothing, less than a breath. But she had made shots in less time. Once during a live fire exercise, she hit a drone moving at Mach 2 from a moving platform. The shot took 0.38 seconds from trigger pull to impact. She could do this. How far? She asked. 12,000 kilometers, Lyra said, beyond standard sensor range for human weapons. But your rifle is not standard. May's rail rifle was a prototype, built in a black lab under the Rockies. It used magnetic acceleration and smart slugs that adjusted mid-flight. The barrel was lined with nanofilaments that cooled instantly after firing. It made no muzzle flash, no sonic boom in vacuum, just a whisper of displaced air and a hole where something important used to be. She had named it Silence. Kale lifted his head, his golden eyes fixed on May. He knew what was coming. Dragon sensed intent like heat. He had seen her train for weeks, calculating trajectories, testing slug compositions, syncing her breathing to ship vibrations. She was ready. Lyra stood. We will reach optimal position in 6 hours. You should rest. May shook her head. Rest came later. Now she needed to check every connection, every charge cell, every micro-adjustment on the rifle's scope. One grain of dust could throw off the shot at that range. As Lyra left to monitor the ship's systems, May began her ritual. She disassembled the rifle piece by piece, cleaning each part with a cloth soaked in distilled solvent. She checked the power coil, tested the targeting matrix, aligned the gravity compensator. Kale watched silent, his tail twitching only when she paused to stretch her neck. Outside, the stars grew brighter. Proxima Centauri filled the viewport, a red dwarf burning steady and cold. And around it, like metal petals around a dark flower, floated the Council fleet. Hundreds of ships, sleek, symmetrical, emotionless, and in the center, the Oath of Order. May reassembled the rifle. The pieces clicked into place with satisfying precision. She slung it over her shoulder and walked to the forward observation blister, a dome of reinforced glass at the ship's nose. From here, the fleet looked small, harmless, but she knew better. One wrong move, one missed calculation, and the Iron Wren would be vaporized before they even knew they were seen. She sat, cross-legged again, and closed her eyes, not to sleep. To focus, she imagined the shot. The wind resistance in vacuum was 0, but magnetic fields from the star would bend the slug's path slightly. She factored in the ship's drift, the rotation of the flagship, the timing of the shield cycle. She saw it all in her mind, frame by frame, like a film played backward and forward. When she opened her eyes, her hands were steady. Her breath was slow. Her mind was empty of everything except the target. Lyra returned an hour later. Her face was calm, but her fingers tapped once against her thigh, a sign of tension only Kale and May would notice. They are running drills, she said. Shield rotation every 23 minutes. The gap appears at the 17-minute mark. Last 0.42 seconds, May nodded. Enough. Kale rose and walked to the ship's small armory. He nosed open a panel and pulled out a harness with reinforced loops. It was meant for him. During the shot, he would anchor himself to the hull and channel a stabilizing pulse through the ship's frame, canceling out micro vibrations. It was risky. It would drain him, but he did not hesitate. May stood. Time to move. They went to the ventral bay where a hidden panel opened to space. May stepped into a magnetic suit. Lightweight, no oxygen needed for short exposure. She clipped the rifle to her back and secured her gloves. Lyra handed her a comm bead. "One shot," Lyra said. "Then we run." May gave a small nod. She did not say good luck. Luck had nothing to do with it. The bay door hissed open. Cold vacuum rushed in, but May did not flinch. She stepped onto the hull, magnetic boots locking into place. Above her, the stars were sharp and clear. Below, the council fleet glowed like a city of ghosts. She knelt, bracing the rifle against a reinforced strut. The scope flickered to life, syncing with the ship's sensors. Numbers scrolled across her visor. Distance, drift, shield phase. She adjusted her stance, breathed in, held. 17 minutes passed. The Oath of Order rotated slightly, adjusting formation. Its shields shimmered. Blue, then gold, then clear for less than half a heartbeat. May fired. The slug left the barrel with no sound, no flash. It streaked through the void, correcting its path with tiny bursts of ion gas. 12,000 kilometers away. It struck the exact point where the thermal shield had just dropped, and the phase shield had not yet risen. The slug punched through the hull, pierced 3 bulkheads, and vaporized the command throne where Admiral Vorlak sat. On the Oath of Order, alarms blared. Lights flickered. Officers scrambled. But on the Iron Wren, there was only silence. May stood, turned, walked back into the bay. Lyra closed the door behind her. Kale was already at the controls, his claws resting on the stabilizer levers. The ship turned, engines flaring low and quiet, slipping into the shadow of a passing asteroid. They did not celebrate. Not yet. But as the council fleet erupted into chaos behind them, May allowed herself one small breath, not of relief, of satisfaction. They thought humans were awkward. They had just met a human who killed with silence. Back in the cargo bay, she wiped down the rifle again. Kale curled beside her, exhausted but proud. Lyra entered with 2 cups of steaming broth, human recipe, elven herbs. "You did it," Lyra said. May shook her head. "We did it, and for the first time the word we felt right. Not human and elf. Not sniper and exile. Just partners." The Iron Wren drifted deeper into the dark, unseen, unheard. But somewhere in the galaxy a message was already spreading. A single playing card, left behind in the ruins of a command deck. The Ace of Spades. Earth's calling card. And the council would not forget. Chaos spread through the council fleet like fire through dry grass. The Oath of Order drifted lifeless at the center of formation. Its command deck a crater of melted metal and scorched wiring. Alarms wailed across every ship. Comms channels filled with panicked voices speaking in clipped formal tones that cracked under stress. No one had seen the shot. No one knew where it came from. All they knew was that Admiral Vorlak was gone, vaporized in his own throne, and with him, the fleet's chain of command on the Iron Wren. Silence ruled. May sat with her back against the bulkhead, eyes closed, breathing slow. The shot was done. Her body knew to rest now, to let the tension drain from her muscles. Lyra monitored the long-range sensors, her fingers dancing over the console. Kale lay curled near the engine core, his scales dim, his breath shallow. Channeling the stabilizing pulse had cost him, but he was alive. They all were. They had planned for this moment. Not the exact timing, not the exact reaction, but the aftermath. The council would not understand what hit them. They would assume sabotage, internal betrayal, maybe even a rival faction. They would not think of a single human sniper firing from the dark, because in their minds humans did not think like that. Humans were loud, messy, obvious. They were wrong. Lyra tapped a command into the console. The Iron Wren's stealth field hummed louder, bending light and sensor waves around the hull. They were already slipping away, hidden in the debris trail of a shattered comm satellite. But Lyra had one more move to make. She opened a secure channel, not to the council, not to any known network, but to the deep archive, a hidden data vault buried in Earth's old lunar base, protected by layers of encryption and forgotten passwords. Only a handful of people knew it existed. May was one of them. From that vault, Lyra began to broadcast not a threat, not a declaration of war, but truth. The first file was grainy, black and white, recorded over 200 years ago. It showed a refugee ship, sleek silver, clearly not human, crash landing in the Arctic. Humans in heavy coats and goggles rushed to help. They pulled out wounded beings with 6 limbs and skin like glass. They gave them heat, medicine, shelter. Even though they did not understand their language, they shared their food. The next file showed a council vessel arriving weeks later, demanding the refugees be handed over. The human commander, a woman with tired eyes and a firm voice, refused. She said, "We do not return the helpless to those who hunt them." The council ship left, but the record remained. File after file poured into the galactic net, buried for decades because Earth had no voice in the council, no way to share its history. Now Lyra unleashed it all. Footage of human doctors healing alien children during the Virex plague, of human engineers rebuilding a shattered colony on Kestros 5 after a solar flare, of human poets translating elven hymns into English not for profit, but for beauty. The council had painted humanity as chaotic and selfish, but the truth was quieter, deeper. Humans helped because it was right, not because it was smart, not because it earned them favor, just because. And now the galaxy was watching. On a dozen worlds, beings paused. Merchants in the Orion Bazaar stopped haggling. Scholars on Xanthus Prime rewound the footage. Young recruits in the Sylvan Enclave whispered to each other. Even council loyalists hesitated. How could a species so full of noise also hold so much silence, so much care? But not everyone was moved. From the rear of the fleet, a new ship powered up, larger than the Oath of Order, black, angular, edged with red light. The Iron Maw, commanded by High Enforcer Zareth, Vorlak's second in command, and his closest friend. Zareth did not believe in truth. He believed in order, and in his mind, Earth had broken it. He opened a fleet-wide channel, his voice cold and sharp. "All ships, lock on to the last known origin point of the attack. Scan for stealth signatures, find them, erase them." Lyra heard the order through the static. Her fingers froze for half a second. Then she rerouted power to the engines. "We have to move now," May stood. Her rifle was already slung. She moved to the cockpit, her steps light but sure. Kale rose, shaking off his fatigue. His eyes glowed faintly. He knew danger was coming. The Iron Wren surged forward, diving toward the gravity well of Proxima Centauri's largest planet, a gas giant ringed with storms. Lyra used the magnetic interference to mask their trail, but the Iron Maw was faster than expected. Its sensors were newer, sharper. "They are gaining," May said. Lyra nodded. "They expected us to run deep. But we are not running deep. We are going up." She angled the ship toward the star's corona, a risky move. Most ships would melt. But the Iron Wren had a secret. Its hull was lined with salvaged sylvan crystal, capable of absorbing and dispersing extreme heat. It would not last long, but it would last long enough. The Iron Maw followed, its weapons charging. Plasma cannons glowed red along its spine. Inside the cockpit, May watched the rear display. The enemy ship filled the screen, growing larger. She did not flinch. She turned to Lyra. "Can we outfly it? Not for long," Lyra said. "But we do not need to." She tapped a sequence into the console. From hidden compartments along the Iron Wren's hull, dozens of small drones launched, no bigger than birds. They carried no weapons, only mirrors. Sylvan light mirrors tuned to reflect and amplify stellar radiation. As the Iron Wren skimmed the star's surface, the drones spread out, forming a wide arc. The star's light hit them, bent, focused. A beam of pure solar energy lanced out, not at the Iron Maw, but at the space just in front of it. The sudden burst of radiation overloaded its forward sensors. Alarms blared on Zareth's bridge. He pulled up, blinded for 3 critical seconds. In that time, Lyra spun the Iron Wren hard to port and vanished into a magnetic storm. Silence returned. May exhaled. Kale rested his head on the console, his breath warm against the metal. But Lyra did not relax. She knew Zareth would not give up. He was not like Vorlak. Vorlak believed in rules. Zareth believed in vengeance. She opened a new channel. This one was short range, encrypted, aimed at a single point in the asteroid belt nearby. A voice answered instantly. "This is Captain Nora. You owe me 10 credits. Lyra smiled faintly. "We are even now. We need extraction." Nora was human, a smuggler, a pilot, and one of the few who knew the old Earth networks. Her ship, the Rusthawk, was ugly and loud but fast, and invisible to council scanners, thanks to a cloaking device built from stolen tech and duct tape. 10 minutes later, The Rust Hawk dropped out of a shadowed crater, its engines coughing smoke. The Iron Wren docked with a hiss of pressurized air. May stepped through first, rifle in hand. Nora stood in the hallway, arms crossed, dark hair tied back, a scar running through her left eyebrow. "You look like hell?" Nora said. May gave a small nod. "You too." Lyra and Kyle followed. The Rust Hawk's crew, 3 humans and 1 four-eyed mechanic from Glisa, stared at the dragon but said nothing. They had seen stranger. As the 2 ships separated, the Rust Hawk jumped to warp, leaving the Iron Wren behind as a decoy. Lyra had programmed it to drift toward the star, broadcasting false life signs. If Zareth found it, he would find an empty shell. Aboard the Rust Hawk, May finally sat. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the release of tension. Nora handed her a mug of strong coffee. "You really shot Vorlak from 12,000 clicks," she said. May sipped the coffee. "Yeah." Nora whistled low. "The Council is losing its mind. Your broadcast is everywhere. Even the Sylvan Enclave is talking about it." Lyra entered the small mess area, her face tired but calm. "They are starting to see. Not all of them, but enough." Kale curled up under the table, resting his head on May's boot. She reached down and scratched his jaw ridge. He rumbled softly. Nora leaned forward. "So what now?" Lyra looked at May, then at the stars through the viewport. "Now we make sure they never forget, because the shot was not the end. It was the beginning." The galaxy thought humans were awkward, loud, and simple, but one quiet woman with a rifle and a dragon at her side had just rewritten the story, and the Council would have to listen. The Council loyalists came at dawn, though dawn meant little on a world with no sun. Their dropships tore through the violet sky like blades, black and sharp, trailing smoke from engines pushed too hard. They had tracked the Rust Hawk through a leak in an old trade beacon, one Nora had forgotten to scrub. It did not matter now. They were here. Lyra stood in the center of the tower's main chamber, her back straight, her hands empty. Kale circled her once, low to the ground, his scales shifting from dull red to a deep warning orange. May was not beside her. She was already gone, vanished into the high ridges hours before the first ship appeared. Her place was not in the open. It was in the shadows where she could see everything and be seen by no one. Nora and her crew had left the night before, taking the Rust Hawk back to the outer rim. They could not stay. This fight was not theirs. But before she left, Nora pressed a small device into Lyra's hand, a human-made pulse detonator, crude but powerful. "Just in case," she had said. Now, the ground shook as armored enforcers poured from the dropships, not the standard patrol units. These were elite, black carapace armor, neural sync weapons, and visors that glowed with cold blue light. They moved in perfect silence, fanning out in a wide arc around the tower. They knew what waited inside. They had studied the reports. The dragon, the exile, the sniper. But they did not understand what those 3 had become together. Lyra stepped onto the balcony. The wind tugged at her hair. Below, the enforcers raised their weapons. One of them, taller than the rest, stepped forward. His voice boomed through a modulator, flat and emotionless. "Surrender the human. Hand over the dragon. Your life will be spared." Lyra did not answer. She simply raised her left hand. From the eastern ridge, a single shot cracked the air, not aimed at the speaker, aimed at the generator powering the enforcer's shield emitters. Sparks erupted. The blue barrier flickered and died. Chaos followed. The enforcers scattered, but not fast enough. Kale launched himself from the balcony, wings snapping open with a sound like tearing metal. He did not roar. He did not waste breath on sound. Instead, he opened his jaws and released a beam of white-hot plasma, narrow, controlled, precise. It cut through 3 enforcers in a line, burning clean through armor and bone. They fell without a cry. Lyra moved next. She leapt from the balcony, landing lightly on the stone below. In her hands now was a slender staff of black wood, tipped with sylvan crystal. It hummed as she spun it, deflecting pulse rounds with sharp cracks of energy. She was not a warrior by training, but exile had taught her to fight, and she fought not for glory but for survival. Above, May shifted position. She had already fired 3 shots, each one disabled, not killed. A sensor node, a comms relay, a weapon capacitor. She was thinning their advantage piece by piece. Her rifle silence rested on a folded thermal blanket, its barrel cool, its scope clear. The enforcers regrouped. They had not expected resistance like this. They had expected fear, surrender. Instead, they faced silence, fire, and precision. Their commander signaled a new tactic. 2 squads broke off, heading for the ridges, hunting the sniper. May saw them coming. She packed her gear in 3 seconds and moved. Not away, not into hiding, but deeper into their path. She knew these canyons better than they did. She had walked them at night, felt their bones, learned their secrets. She set a trap near a narrow pass, sonic emitters buried under rock wired to a pressure plate. When the first enforcer stepped on it, the emitters fired. Not loud, just a frequency that scrambled their neural links. They dropped, twitching, systems overloaded. She did not look back. She was already climbing higher. Below, Kale landed hard, his wings folding tight. He was breathing fast. The plasma beam cost him. But he was not done. He turned toward a group of enforcers trying to flank Lyra. His eyes glowed brighter. Then instead of fire, he exhaled a thick cloud of ember mist. It clung to the air, swirling around the enforcers. Where it touched their armor, circuits sparked and died. It was not just smoke. It was charged with void energy, leftover radiation from the stars he fed on. Lyra used the confusion to strike. Her staff cracked against an enforcer's helmet. The crystal tip flared, sending a shockwave through his system. He collapsed, but more were coming. Dropships circled overhead, scanning, searching. They would not stop. Not until the tower was ash. Kale looked at Lyra. His golden eyes held a question. She nodded. It was time. He walked to the center of the clearing, head low, tail coiled. Then he did something he had never done in front of others. He unfurled his wings fully. Not the small span used for flight, but the true wings. Vast, veined with silver, edged in black. They stretched wider than the tower was tall. The air grew heavy. The ground trembled. Even the wind stopped. The enforcers froze. Lyra spoke, her voice calm but clear. You think he is just a pet. A weapon, a beast. But he is older than your council. Older than your laws. Kale opened his mouth, not to breathe fire, but to sing. The sound was not loud. It was deep. It vibrated in the chest, in the bones, in the mind. It was the sound of stars being born, of galaxies turning, of time itself moving. The enforcers clutched their heads. Their armor cracked. Their weapons sparked and died. Some fell to their knees. Others simply shut down, their systems unable to process the frequency. May felt it even from the ridge. She paused, hand on her rifle, eyes wide. She had known Kale was special. But this was something else. Lyra walked to Kale's side. She placed a hand on his neck. He lowered his head, the song fading to a hum. The clearing was silent. The enforcers lay still, not dead, just broken. But one ship remained, the command dropship hovering high above, its weapons charged. It would not send more troops. It would level the tower. May saw it. She raised her rifle, but the distance was too great. The angle too steep. She could not make the shot unless... She turned and ran, not away, toward the tower. She knew what she had to do. Lyra saw her coming. She understood. She signaled Kyle. He crouched low. May leapt onto his back, rifle strapped tight. With a powerful thrust of his legs and a snap of his true wings, Kale launched into the sky. The wind roared. The dropship's weapon spun up. But May was already bracing. Kale leveled out just below the ship, hovering in the thin air. May knelt on his back, rifle steady against his spine. She sighted the weapon array, held her breath, fired. The slug pierced the emitter core. The ship shuddered. Alarms blared. It tilted, smoke pouring from its side, and began to fall. Kale banked hard, diving back to the ground. May slid off as soon as they landed, rolling to absorb the impact. She stood, breathing hard but steady. Lyra walked to her. Kale lay down, exhausted, his wings folding slowly. His scales dimmed to a soft red. You trusted him? Lyra said. May looked at the dragon. Yeah. He trusted me first. Lyra knelt beside Kale. She placed a hand on his snout. He is not just a dragon, she said softly. He is the last of the Voidborn. His kind lived in the spaces between galaxies. They fed on cosmic radiation. They remembered the birth of light. When the Great Wars came, they were hunted, used, destroyed. Kale's egg was hidden in the ruins of a dead star. I found it. I raised him. But he chose you too, May. He saw something in you. Something quiet. Something true. May said nothing. She just reached out and touched Kale's forehead. He rumbled, a sound like distant stars. Above, the last dropship burned as it crashed into the valley. Smoke rose into the violet sky. The Loyalists were gone. But Lyra knew this was not the end. The Council would send more, stronger, angrier. Yet something had changed today, not just in the battle, but in the bond between them. Elf, human, dragon. They were no longer three, they were one. And the galaxy would have to face what they had made together. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council hung in silence, not the silence of emptiness, but the heavy silence of held breath. Towering beings from 100 worlds stood in their places. Crystalline diplomats from Zenthus, armored delegates from the Iron Hive, robed sages of the Sylvan Enclave. All watched as the central platform lit with soft blue light. On it stood Lyra Voss, her silver hair loose, her leathers clean but worn. At her side, Kyle rested, his wings folded, his eyes half closed but alert. And behind them, in the shadow of a support pillar, stood May Holloway. She wore no uniform, just dark fatigues, boots scuffed from travel, and her rifle slung low across her back. She did not step forward. She did not need to. Her presence was felt like a shift in the air. The Council had called this session an emergency, not to condemn, not to punish, but to understand. The broadcast from Earth had spread like wildfire. The shot that killed Vorlak had shaken their certainty, and the battle at the Violet World had broken their pride. They could no longer pretend humans were simple. Loud, awkward, high-speaker Orlan, a being of woven light and ancient voice, floated at the center of the chamber. "Lyra Voss," he said, "you stand before us not as an exile, but as a voice. Speak." Lyra did not bow. She did not raise her voice. She simply said, "Earth does not ask for mercy. It asks for a seat." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A seat had never been given to a species so young, so untested. But before anyone could object, Lyra raised her hand, and from the chamber's main display, new footage played, not of war, not of weapons, but of a human child handing a flower to a wounded alien soldier during a border skirmish, of human engineers sharing water purifiers with drought-stricken colonies, of a human musician playing a song that made even Sylvan elders weep. "We do not seek to rule," Lyra said. "We seek to belong, and if you will not give us a voice, then we will make one." She stepped aside. Kale rose and walked forward 3 steps. He lowered his head, not in submission but in offering. From his throat he released a single note, deep, pure, resonant. It filled the chamber not as sound but as feeling. Every being there felt it in their core. It was the song of connection, of memory, of shared sky. Then from the shadows May stepped forward. She did not speak. She walked to the center of the platform and placed a single object on the floor, the Ace of Spades, the same card left on Vorlak's ship, the same symbol now known across 100 systems. "This is not a threat," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "It is a promise. Harm Earth and you answer to us." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Because everyone now knew what us meant. Not just a sniper, not just an exile, but a partnership forged in silence, fire, and loyalty. High Speaker Orlan was silent for a long time. Then he turned to the Council. "The vote will be taken." One by one, the delegates cast their choice. Some hesitated. Some refused. But more than half raised their lights in agreement. Earth would join the Council, not as a subject, not as a ward, but as a sovereign voice. And then Orlan spoke again. "Who will speak for Earth?" Lyra looked at May. May did not look away. She gave a small nod. "May Holloway," Lyra said. "Humanity's first tactical envoy." Gasps echoed. A human, a sniper, as an envoy. It was unheard of. Envoys were scholars, diplomats, not soldiers. But May stood straight. She met the eyes of every delegate. She did not smile. She did not boast. She simply said, "I will not waste your time with words. I will show you what Earth is." And for the first time, the oldest elven lords in the chamber bowed their heads, not out of fear, but out of respect. After the session, the 3 of them stood on the observation deck of the Council spire. Below, the city of stars stretched in every direction, ships gliding between towers, gardens floating in zero gravity, music drifting on solar winds. Kale lay on the warm floor, his scales glowing faintly. Lyra leaned against the railing, her face calm. May stood beside her, hands in her pockets, eyes on the horizon. "They did it," Lyra said. May shook her head. "We did." Kale rumbled softly, his tail curling around May's boot. In the days that followed, messages poured in. From human colonies, from alien worlds, from hidden outposts that had watched in silence. Some offered alliance, some asked for help, some simply said thank you. Earth was no longer alone. And May, once a quiet woman from the Nevada hills, now walked the halls of the council, not as a stranger, but as a symbol, not of war, but of precision, of patience, of the power found in stillness. The galaxy had thought humans were awkward. Now they knew better. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the universe was not a fleet or a weapon. It was a human who knew when not to speak and when to act.